Good morning, dearest friends. Good Erev Shabbos. Today is the second day of tamuz, the first day of July, Canada Day. For our dear Canadian friends. Unfortunately, our Canadian friend just got frozen off. Hopefully, he'll come back in a moment. We'll let him know we're dedicating today for our friends in Canada, and dedicating today for the second yard site of Rosa Bas Yisrael, one of the individuals that we help out every week. He lives alone, and his wife Navach passed away 2 years ago during COVID, and so he asked us to honor his wife's yard site, and he should have all the nechama and bracha that he needs, and all of Klal Yisrael should be blessed with good health, good circumstances, and also I should mention a prayerful wish was mentioned on our group. Hold on, a refuah shalema for Devora Dora Bas Beloria. She should also have a refuah shlema. So again, Beis Tamuz. I would be remiss if I wouldn't say in the outset that tomorrow, Gimel Tamuz, the 3rd of Tamuz, is the Rebbe Lubavitch Rebbe's yard site. Passed away in 1994. The Rebbe's legacy, the Rebbe's teachings, and the Rebbe's passion for loving a fellow Jew and to make Yiddishkeit, as well as all material needs available, continue to reverberate in this planet through the many, many thousands of people that he inspired. The Rebbe was a rabbi, a leader of Jews, a Hasidic Rebbe, but one of the fascinating facets of his leadership, although maybe not the most central thing, was his concern for humanity. And, many times Jews need to be focused inwards, and there's no doubt the Rebbe focused the bulk of his effort towards bettering the Jewish people's lives, but there are so many episodes and times that the Rebbe encountered people, politicians, and he urged them to use their clout to better the life of their constituents or groups that were discriminated or in need, many times not Jewish. And the Rebbe really showed, and I think tried to impart on all of us a concern, not just for every Jew, but for all of humanity, as well as embracing a sense of responsibility towards all of civilization. The Rebbe called, and I think he was a little bit of a lone voice in this, the Rebbe really frequently promoted the idea of the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7 Noahide laws, which are codified by Maimonides, by the Rambam. And the Rebbe explained that for most of human history, and certainly most of Jewish history, a Jew wouldn't dare use their voice to talk about values to a Gentile for the fear of being accused of proselytization. The Rebbe didn't call to try to convert Gentiles to Judaism, but the Rebbe urged whoever would heed their voice to use their day-to-day interactions to also encourage morality and values with their Gentile business associates. One story that for some reason sticks in my mind, the Rebbe once shared at a Fabring, and that there's somebody, actually David Chase, who was the president at the time of some of the Chase, actually Dr. Hammer, maybe you know more because I think he was in New Jersey. Are you familiar with David Chase? He was the president of a number of banks in the tri-state area. I don't know the exact specifics of his. So he was a Holocaust survivor, and he became close to the yeshiva in New Jersey, the Morristown, New Jersey, the rabbinical college, and they introduced him to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe and he struck a very deep friendship, and the Rebbe encouraged him privately to do something to upgrade his Yiddishkeit. Is the internet stable?
Yeah, I got cut off. I'm okay now.
Is my internet, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And so he decides that he's going to start davening every day. He tells the Rebbe, I'm going to start davening every day. A talis, a tefillin. I think the Rebbe gifted him tefillin. And he tells the Rebbe, and the Rebbe shared this publicly with a lot of pride and to inspire others, that this gentleman, as quite a wealthy individual, owned a yacht, and the yacht had a captain. And they went for a multi-day voyage in the seas, and a few times a day, Mr. Chase would approach the captain and ask him which way is east. And after like 3 or 4 times of asking if he could show him which way is east, the captain said, Mr. Chase, I got to ask you a question. I'm the navigator. I'm the captain. I know that you trust me. So why are you all of a sudden so eager to identify the east? I got you covered. Don't worry. You're fine. You're in good hands. We're heading towards our destination. And so Mr. Chase explained, no, I've recently embraced the Jewish practice of tefillah, of prayer. And so for a few minutes, I faced east and I stayed Shemona Esrei, I put on my tefillin and talis. And the captain was a Gentile, a Christian, and he was inspired by the fact that his secular boss is rediscovering his faith. And so the next time they went into port, he asked for an hour or two of leave and he visited the local church. And he decided that he's going to make a tefillah as well. And so the Rebbe spoke about how not every influence is by the words we say, but when we live to be an example, and we live, you know, with some kind of godly value, or we find Hashem in our lives, it is automatically inspiring to others. And the Rebbe publicly spoke about this at the Fabringen. And I think the Rebbe wanted to drive home that when he says that we have to influence Gentiles or all people with Shavah mitzvahs, it didn't always mean accosting people in the streets. Although for Jews, the Rebbe was pretty in favor of that, but it meant more living that way of life and using our relationships to promote Jewish values and godly values. So it was already, I went overtime of what I thought the introduction would be, but the Rebbe's yahrzeit, and the Rebbe certainly, I'm a Chabadnik, I'm biased, but there's no doubt that the Rebbe was one of the very, very influential leaders of Klal Yisrael and humanity, and the Rebbe's voice, the Rebbe's teachings, and the Rebbe's passion for love continues. And as a tzaddik, his zechus yagen aleinu, his merit should extend for all of us, and we should be blessed. And in the zechus of the tzaddik, Hashem should hear our tefillot, and we should have all good matters of good news. I'll actually be flying in for a few hours on Sunday. I'll be by the Rebbe's ohel, just to honor the yahrzeit and to say a little tillim. They only let you go there for 1 minute. They let you walk in and walk out. But I'll be going. If anyone wants me to have them in mind when we pray, whatever.
We have an extra Talmud today.
Oh, Baruch Hashem. Okay, now we can start. Now that we have our long-awaited student, let's get started. We'll share the screen. We're starting a new Mishnah, and this is where my confession goes. I usually like to do a little reconnaissance on the Gemara beforehand. Today, all my staff and all my volunteers are away, so we're going to learn this together. And it's been a very long time since I've seen this Gemara, and so I hope you'll all help me along. New Mishnah. Continuing to talk about the muktza and the transportation of kelim. When is one permitted to carry a muktza item? Can we just dance around the house carrying our hammer or even our ice cream scooper? Or is it not muktza only when it's necessary? So here goes our Mishnah with a machlekes. Kol ha-kelim nitolim l'tzoyrech v'shaloi l'tzoyrech. If a keli is not muktza, the Gemara is going to elaborate. Well, then, whether it is needed or not needed, muktza has been lifted. It is permissible to be handled. It says the Mishnah, the first opinion, no restrictions. What that means, you got to see the Gemara. Rabbi Nechemia says no. And you may recall, we've seen Rabbi Nechemia's position before. Ein nitolim ela litzorech. Even a vessel that we said you're allowed to handle on Shabbos, that's only when you actually need it, but not that one should randomly dance around the house with a muktza, or I'm going to take back words, with a keli. Now the Gemara is going to say, the Gemara is going to push us to identify and to translate this somewhat vague Mishnah. We're going to tease out the practical and tangible implications of our Mishnah. Let's see. My litzoyrech, when the Gemara, when the Mishnah says litzorech, we all know what the word sorech means. Sorech means a need, or Rabbi Steinsaltz translates for a purpose. Article translates for a necessity. You get the point. You need it. My litzorech or my shalol litzorech. Would you mind explaining what a tzorech is, what a need, what a necessity is, and what a non-necessity is? Amar Rabba explains, litzorech. We say litzorech, what we mean is davar shemalachtoi leheter litzorech gufai. Rabba says it means you're allowed to take a tool that is permissible, its primary use is permissible, like the ice cream scooper, ice cream scoop. L'tzayrech gufay, to scoop ice cream for the primary function. Shaloi l'tzayrech, what does it mean? Not for a need, not for a necessity. Davar shemalach l'heter. Again, the ice cream scoop. We're not talking about hammers here, says Rabbah. We're talking about an ice cream scoop that is milach l'heter. Now you're taking a shaloi l'tzayrech. You're taking it l'tzayrech mikaymai. You can take it for the purpose of having its place, the place that it was previously occupying. Rashi, shaloi l'tzarech, davar shemalach leheter, umetaltaloi shaloi l'tzarech gufa. You can carry it for not its actual common use, avol tzarech l'mkaim, but you need its place. Rabbah continues, davar shemalach le'iser, a hammer, something that its primary use is prohibited. L'tzarech gufa in, you may move it for tzarech gufay, for a use of the item itself, cracking nuts, tzarech mekaymai, but for its place, like. So Rabbi explains again the Mishnah, the lenient opinion, the opinion that says tzarech and shaloi tzarech. He says shaloi tzarech doesn't mean to dance around the house. It doesn't mean just to randomly juggle. He means for not its primary purpose, or not to use the item, but to have the item's place. That's what shaloi tzarech means. Continues Rabbah. Also, Reb Nechemya lememar. Reb Nechemya heightens and is more strict. He disagrees and says, "Afilu davar shemalachte leheter." Even the ice cream scoop, with tzarech gufayin, you can use it to scoop ice cream. Or maybe you could even use it to scoop fruit. I don't know if you could. With tzarech mekaymai, but if you need its place, loy, one may not do so. This is Rabbah's opening presentation on the Mishnah. Amar le Rava. Rava challenges Rabbah's interpretation. This is one of the when you're a new student of the Talmud. This is one of the more confusing name dynamics that we have. I know I pointed this out before, but we have Rabbah and Rav Yosef, who were contemporaries. Their students, the next generation, their students were Rava and Abaya. So Rava and Abaya were students of Rabbah. And so we have Rabbah Reish Beis Hey giving his interpretation of the Mishnah. We have Rava, the disciple, who becomes, of course, a great authority of the Talmud in his own right. But here we have him sparring with his teacher. If I'm not mistaken, Abaya and Rava were both Kohanim, I think. And they were both related, and they were both descendants of Eli HaKohen. And as you recall, when we were talking about the discussion of dreams, I believe there it came up that they both lived relatively short lifespans, and it's associated with a curse that Eli is informed because his sons were very not well behaved, if I recall correctly. But anyways, Rava challenges his teacher, Rabbah. He says, one second. The Mishnah says, Shalo litzarech, not necessary. And you're telling me that means litzarech mekaymai? Are you telling me that when the Mishnah says it's not needed, it's actually an instance of need? That doesn't ring right. It doesn't sound right. Right? You're using the word shaloi l'tzorech to describe a tzorech. He's saying not needed means not needed for its primary use, but only for its place. Elam Rava, therefore, understands our Mishnah a little different, more permissive, more expansive. Elam Rava explains the Mishnah as follows. When it says l'tzorech, that you're allowed to move a keli l'tzorech, he means davar shemalachta leheter, an ice cream scoop or anything that its primary use is totally Shabbistic. You're allowed to move it both to use it or to clear out the space it was previously occupying. And we say that it's for no real need. For even a minor and not truly burning necessity. You could just move it into the shade. Person might want or like to move something into the shade, but it's not a real need. That's what Rava explains. What about a tool which is primary use? A kli is not Shabbistic, a hammer. Well, then one can move it both to use it to crush nuts, or to take the hammer off the chair or wherever else it may be. That is permissible. But you would not be allowed to move a keli that's prohibited from chamol etzel. Rava eases up. He reads the Mishnah and says it's just a tad more permissive. A ice cream scooper, which is our stand-in for klisha malachte leheter, that he's saying you're allowed to even move it just randomly from the sun to the shade. But a hammer you could use, you could clear a space. You would not be able to just randomly move it to the just to put it in a better climate. Also, Rav Nechemia lememar, and Rav Nechemia comes to tighten up, be less permissive, and he says, "Afilu davar shemalach leheter, even a ice cream scoop." He says you may use it to use it, you may move it to clear away where it to have its place, but you may not move it mechamol etzeiloi. So this is Rava. Rava, his interpretation of this Mishnah is a tad more permissive and also consistent with our previous readings of Rava's opinion. Although I suppose, well, let's read Rashi. Amalei Rava. Rava, who defines Rabbi Nechemia's position to be pretty permissive, to say that you're allowed to move a litzarch for its place, a klisha malachte. He says that you're allowed to move a keli litzarch gufay litzarch mekaymai to use it or for its place. He says when we say litzarch gufay, high litzarch gufay kigayin shezeh hatashmash miyuchalei. We must say that Rav Nechemia also means its primary function. Why? Because Rav Nechemia elsewhere is clear that he only lets an item to be used for its primary use. So tzarech gufa here is going to mean not just a use, but its primary use. And when Rabbi says tzarech gufa the Shari Nechemia, dafka l'tash m'sham yuchid lo bin l'Rabbi l'Rava dafka davar shalach l'heter when tzarech fil tzarech gufa l'Shari. Anyway, okay, Rashi just explains and wants to clarify that indeed Rav Nechemia is a whole lot stricter. You can only use something for its primary use, but he's not usually inclined to permit it. Let's continue the Gemara. Yosef Rav Nechemia.
Just
sorry, go ahead. Professor? So just to clarify, actually, I want to clarify one more time. So Rava gives generally a more permissive take on the Mishnah. The first opinion that says l'tzarech and shalei l'tzarech will tell you a kli shemalachte leheter can just about be used for any justifiable reason, even just to move from sun to shade. And even a kli shemalachte le'isser can also be moved for the main, most compelling reasons, for a use and for its place. However, Rava would explain Rab Nechemia to say a ice cream scooper can be used only to scoop ice cream or for its place, not from the sun. And a kli shemalachta le'isser, a hammer, according to Rab Nechemia, would never be allowed to be moved. So again, he only talks about a kli shemalachta leheter, because Rab Nechemia would prohibit a kli shemalachta le'isser, period. You know why? Because he's Rava, and now I remember, Dr. Hammer, you taught us a phrase long ago. What was it called? Flexible.
Yeah.
Was it?
Functional fixedness.
Functional fixedness. You see, I didn't even realize how helpful that term would be. But once again, I think we're introduced to functional fixedness. Reb Nechemia generally looks at a kli in a more, I don't know, use the word one-dimensional, but a much more rigid way. And actually, it's probably good for business. If you can only use a kli for its primary use, you might be able to sell a whole lot more stuff your Jewish consumer for Shabbos use. But anyways, Reb Nechemia says we look at everything. We look at the sticker, we look at the label, we look at how it's advertised. And so a hammer for spice is a hammer for spice, a hammer for gold is a hammer for gold, a hammer for nails is a hammer for nails, and a hammer for the blacksmith for metalworking. That's it. And it's inconceivable, or at least halachically, we're not going to allow you to play loose with the laws of muktza, the laws of Shabbos. And so if it's usur, it's usur. Don't touch that saw for any reason. Reb Nechemia is quite restrictive in the laws of muktza. So once again, a useful. Again, I'm not saying that's. If we're going to dig deep into the perspective of Reb Nechemia, I don't want to say that he's superficially talking about functional fixedness, but certainly as a matter of halacha, he views the tool in the light of its primary use, and that's what determines if it's muktza. All right, now the Gemara is going to revisit Rabbah, who is the one again who we read as the initial explanation of the Mishnah, which says keli, ice cream scooper, gufay and mekaymai, hammer only gufay, and Reb Nechemia would say even a kli shemalachte leheter can only be used for its primary use. That was Rav, much more restricted. Yosef Rav Safra Rav Acha Bar Huna Rav Huna Bar Chanina v'Yasvi v'Ka'amri. Rav Safra, Rav Acha, Rav Huna, and we're sitting around and discussing. What do you think these rabbis are discussing? Halacha, Torah, Gemara, Mishnah. So they said as follows. They asked as follows: Rabbah in his definition of aliba, that Reb Nechemia, Rabbah, who's generally very, very restricted. Certainly in his definition of Reb Nechemia, which says you cannot use a kli shemalachtoi leheter, you cannot even move a permissible ice cream scooper for its makom. L'tzarich mekaymai. Rashi damar davar shemalachtoi mekaymai loy. Well, then you're gonna have a problem. Hani kairos, heichi mitaltalinon. We just ate. We have dirty dishes. Let's read Rashi. Hani kairos la'achra achila. Heichi mitaltaluhu misalkon milfanenu. Shalom aleichem. Yeah, we're live. We're going to be here for another half an hour. So how can I help you? Okay. 7 o'clock tonight. Tomorrow, 8 and 10. Shalom aleichem.
7 o'clock tonight.
Tomorrow, 8 and 10. Shalom aleichem. All right. So according to how Rabbah teaches us Reb Nechemia in the Mishnah, we just had a meal. We have leftover dishes. Heichi metaltalinon. Is there a way that we would be allowed to move them out of the way? Reb Nechemia would tell us, these are muktza, don't touch them. Now, I don't think they're paskening according to the Nechemia the way Rabbah understands it, but they're having a how do you call it? They're having a Torah discussion based around the reality of their experience. They just had an experience, they just had a soda, they just had a meal, and now they want to figure out how would Reb Nechemia permit them to remove these dishes. Rav Safra. Rav Safra said, actually, it's not so complicated. You know why? Midei dehave agar sharei. There are certain licenses to move things that are utterly unappetizing and considered repulsive. So, for example, if you have a chamber pot, a dish full of waste, although generally speaking, it should be muktza, one is permitted to remove it. And so just as one can remove a ger sharei, you should be allowed to move the dirty dishes as well. So just like the ger sharei is considered repulsive, disgusting, similarly, and you're allowed to move it, similarly, one should be permitted to also remove dirty dishes. Now, if we would take a poll over here and we'd ask between 1 and 10 how similar or different a dirty dish is to a chamber pot, I'm not certain that we'd all literally see it in the same light, but I think we all can agree that a used dirty plate can be quite unappetizing, especially if there's waste, the items that cannot be consumed that are left on the plate. It could be very unappetizing, and so we could identify and understand that it would be a certainly an unpleasant thing to leave on the table. So even though it's muktza, one is allowed to move these items. Interesting. In Sefer Beer, in the Mishnah Brewer, I believe it says that for this reason, you might be allowed to move away a cholent pot or a dish that's been emptied. However, other contemporary poskim don't allow that. So you have a discussion, a modern day halacha, a modern day halachic discussion about what exactly, or which dishes, dirty dishes can or can't be used, removed. But certainly, we have dirty dishes on the table, dirty plates and stuff on the table. You're allowed to remove it. So again, if you have a question, are you allowed to clear off your table Friday night after the Su'udah? Yes, that's what our Gemara is telling us. Even according to Reb Nechemia, who's generally strict, he too would permit it.
Rabbi,
Yes.
we previously had a discussion of permissibility of washing the dishes, depending on whether you are going to use them during Shabbos again or not.
Yes.
How does it square with this discussion? Because I think that all those conditions should be clarified, or depending on whether you are going to use it later or it is its use is finished for this.
So I don't know if you know, I think you
Shabbos.
probably noticed, but maybe others didn't. I was kind of careful with my words when I said Friday night, because I wanted to reference without necessarily getting into it, but I'm glad that you brought it up. So it is possible, it's quite
I brought it up because you mentioned Friday
Right.
night.
So it's quite likely that they would not necessarily hold that you could remove those kelim on Shabbos day, or at least in Shabbos afternoon. It's quite possible they wouldn't. The reason why I didn't want to immediately compare and contrast the two discussions is because this is really in a sense, a footnote. It's not a footnote because it's in the Gemara, but I mean, it's a footnote to that discussion, because here we're trying to identify the most restrictive position in its most restrictive light. We're trying to interpret according to Reb Nechemia as understood by Rabbah. And so I'm not certain that this is really a conversation that's 100%, even in the intention of the sages of the Gemara, halacha l'maisa. I think there is an academic dimension to the conversation. And so therefore I don't have the tools to fully synthesize it with other case. I believe it's taking a more strict position than what we've already determined to be halacha l'maisa. And yet, even according to Reb Nechemia, maybe he would permit, or likely he would permit to move those kelim because they are repulsive. So there is an additional waiver, even to the viewpoint of Reb Nechemia. Usually, muktza means you can use it. I'm sorry, not the muktza means you can use it. Muktza means you can't move it. Nechemia says you can only use something for its primary use. But there may be additional heterim. For example, here, there may be the heter of Gerav Sharei, something that's really...
I wonder whether what is the primary use for dishes. One might say it's to put food into it, but is washing dishes the primary use, or it's something else, another category of action?
Right. So
we cannot say that we buy dishes so that we are able to wash them. We are saying we are buying the dishes because we want to put food into them. So what is the primary purpose of dishes then?
I don't think anyone would make the case that dishes exist so that you can wash them.
Right.
It's a necessary step in their preparation. So you're asking if Reb Nechemia would permit one to wash the dishes.
Right.
I'm not certain, but it might be considered part of the process of its conventional use. I don't know. That's not discussed at this point. But we're not yet done with this Gemara, so let's see. There'll be some more discussion. But it's very interesting. So, Professor, if I could just rephrase and simplify what you said, we have an open question, which is, suppose you're allowed to move them. Where does that put us in regards to washing the dishes? Would Reb Nehemiah allow one to handle these dishes in order to wash them? Or would he exclusively permit that for the purpose of removal? We have another question, which, let's see the Gemara, and then I want to bring up a few other issues. Oh, and then the other question that the professor brings up very wisely, I tried to avoid it, but the professor was right to bring it up, is this entire Shabbos or only a specific part of Shabbos? So let's see the rest of the Gemara, and then I want to revisit a few of the details of the story. Esei Abaya. Abaya. No, I'm sorry. So this was, sorry. Rav Safra, Rav Acha, Rav Huna were discussing this, and they determined that, or at least Rav Safra said, it would be like a Garav Shalrei. Okay. Amrli Abaya l'Rabba. Abaya actually asked this question to Rabbi. Lemar Aliba de Rabbi Nehemiah, you, based on your understanding of the Mishnah, or based on your understanding of Rabbi Nehemiah's words in the Mishnah, how might Rabbi Nehemiah permit the moving of these dishes? Amarle, Rav Safra, Chavrin, Targama. Rav Safra, our colleague, has already given the key, has already given the answer. Midi dehava Garav Sharei. So Rabbah actually confirms the explanation of Rav Safra. It's an interesting phrase. And it also shows us that Rabbah was aware of the conversation that his disciples were having, and he endorsed it, which is quite interesting. And so that is that. Now, Rava previously was the one who interpreted our Mishnah very flexibly, with a lot of leniency. And Rava said that keli shemalachte le'isur could be moved, a hammer could be used and could be moved for its place. Obviously, when I say used, I mean in a permissible manner. Esei Abaya. Abaya is now going to ask a question to how Rava deciphered and interpreted our Mishnah based on a text that we've already explored once or twice. The mortar, if it has garlic within it, metaltal and isa can be moved. As you may recall, this has been brought up a number of times, and every time it's brought up, the Gemara needs to probe what would be the reason for moving it. So Abaya now asks her, we have a text that says, Medocha with garlic can be moved. Absent of garlic, you cannot move it. Rashi basically says you got to fill in these words. The way Rabbah explains the Mishnah, I would explain, if you're going to Ein Sarach Legufa, you don't need to use it. You need its place. So there's a reason that Rabbah would say you cannot carry it. But you that are so lenient about moving a kli shemalachli le'isur, you could even move it le'tzarech mekaymai. How would you square your reading of the Mishnah with this teaching? So he'll answer, Hacha b'may askinon. You might answer that here we're talking about, in this brisa, michamo letzel, that you would be allowed to move the medocha for its place. You'd be allowed to move the medocha to use it as a cutting board or whatever else you might use it for. But when the Mishnah says ein metaltlin, we're only talking about michamo letzel. Again, we've already, I think, had this answer in an exchange between Abaya and Rava, but now it's applied to this discussion. Eisvei Abaya goes again for the kill. Bishavin, the Mishnah, the brisa that talks about a machlokes, maybe you remember, Beishamai Bishil, about this medoch. Shem kitzev ala basar she'asur l'taltlin. That if you used it to cut meat on it, everybody agrees that you may no longer use it again. because the only reason that you're allowed to touch it was because Yontif, there was a special labor, l'tzarech the food. But now that you've used it, it's certainly muktza. I thought you said that you're allowed to carry items l'tzarech gufoy and l'tzarech mekayma if you need to move it. So Rava would respond to Abaya, hachenami mechamel itself. I'll explain to you that this brisa fits into my paradigm. The only time you're really not allowed to move something is if you have very little need at all, only for its preservation, for some climate control. Hold on one second. And let's stop here for now. Just going to read for you a little bit over here some of the commentary. If I can find what I wanted to read for you. 1 minute. Now I'm not finding it.
Rabbi,
Yes.
in terms of tables and kitchens and stuff, where does the kavana of hidur mitzvah enter into this in terms of the enhancement of anything when there's order and cleanliness versus schmutz and etc.
You're asking
that enters into the issue of dishes, even if you have other dishes or don't have other dishes. There's something, and I know some people in my family always, didn't do dishes and had large family and had it piled up in the kitchen, even if the dining room or kitchen outside was in order. And
was
so
it Shabbos night or Shabbos day? Do you recall?
Shabbos night.
Interesting. So it sounds like they were very frum. They were being extra.
Yeah.
No, what I mean to say is because from our Gemara, it seems like one might be able. I'll tell you this. Probably the reason why they didn't clean the dishes is not because of muktza and not because of being mechin from Shabbos l'chol.
Right.
Probably it had to do with restrictions in the mode of cleaning. Because in addition to the question of can you handle the kelim, in addition to the question of are you preparing from Shabbos to a weekday, which for that purpose we already determined in the Gemara that the professor referenced a few weeks ago, you'd be allowed to make your house clean and pleasant for the Shabbos day or to use those dishes again. Probably they were conscious of restrictions about how to use soap, what kind of soap might be used, as well as restrictions about the kind of sponge as well as hot water. So probably that admirable degree of halachic concern and Shabbos probably had to do not so much with if you could clean, but how comfortable they were using Shabbos methods of cleaning, which may be less than ideal types of cleanliness. So ironically, there's a chance that the person that's really, really makbid about hygiene might actually prefer to wait till after Shabbos to avoid any limitation in the method of cleaning. This is just a guess, but I have a feeling that would bear out with a little investigation. So, but as far as our Gemara is concerned, certainly one would be allowed to clear off the table, which I think you're telling me did happen. It would just be left in the kitchen.
Right.
And that also, I could look, I just saw an infograph, which again, you don't need an infograph to make the point, but people, because I've been dealing with a few different people, well, a number of people, unfortunately, always, but especially the last 2 years in the community and beyond, the people are dealing with anxiety. And so I've been like, not reading up. I always send people to experts, but it's good to know. And so someone sent me an infograph and I was saying that one of the things that help a person with anxiety is cleanliness. I mean, I think we all know that to be true from our own experience, but it's one of the many factors that can help a person find some kind of peace and relaxation. So it's certainly true that there is a value on Shabbos to have the home clean and removed of clutter and chaos. But again, that wouldn't be a license to run a dishwasher, for example, and it wouldn't be so I suspect that probably in that home there was a tension between those two values, an ideal form of cleaning versus to have it out. And I guess they're the frumkeit one, and so it remains till after Shabbos. Also, if you have a dishwasher, you can avoid washing the dishes by hand entirely and just put them into a dishwasher after Shabbos. Which leads to one last question, and I know of many people who actually place dirty dishes on Shabbos into the dishwasher. So they're not being cleaned, but they are out of sight. But maybe this home didn't have a dishwasher at that time.
Right.
So the question was, we said that you can move a dish because of its repulsiveness, a dirty plate bowl. But it leads us to a problem. And that problem is there's also a type of muktza called the muktza machmas mios. Something that's really repulsive could be muktza. And so the question now becomes, and again, I lost the citation that I wanted to read to you. The question becomes, these dishes, are they now muktza, machmas mios? Because the Gemara confirms that they're considered like a grav sharei. It's like a chamber pot. And there's a special heter to remove something that's repulsive. So the Rashba on Gemara Beya explains that those kelim actually could become muktza machmas mios. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you're not allowed to carry them. According to Rabbi Shimon, you'd be allowed to carry them. And the Maisa, the poskim paskin like Rabbi Shimon on Shabbos that you could carry it, but not on Yontif. So it's plausible that there is greater restriction about dealing with dirty dishes on Yontif than on Shabbos. But if they're in the very room that you're in, you can move them because of the repulsiveness of them. But then afterwards, one probably should wait till after Shabbos. So I don't know if that made sense, but I'm just reading to you what I'm seeing in the name of the Rashba.
Rabbi, just clarify to go back just for a moment.
Yes.
Because you said about putting dishes in the dishwasher. If one doesn't clean, if one just because most people, in my experience, who do that, don't wash the dishes. But they do rinse them underwater to get rid of the big schmutz or whatever and put them in. Is that considered different from washing dishes?
No, doctor, I hadn't thought of this till this moment, but you're asking actually a very good question. The license to clean dishes is because it would be unpleasant to have it around on the next day of Shabbos or to use them. But you're asking a very good question. You put the dishes in the dishwasher, so they're out of sight.
Wow.
And so Shabbos is not enhanced by you washing them off. Should we say that you're not allowed to rinse them off and you should wait till after Shabbos and then unload your dishwasher, rinse them off, and then run the dishwasher, or run a dishwasher without rinsing them at all? I don't have an answer for you, but it's a very interesting question that I had not considered until this point. And I'm sure it's discussed at length, but I just don't have the answer for you. But that's a very, very interesting.
You're not rubbing. You're not because you
Oh, you're not doing a malacha by rinsing them.
You're not rubbing anything. You're not using something.
You're not doing any malacha, but you are. But you're being mechin. So that would be the question.
Right.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Rabbi,
Yes.
if your dishwasher is not mechanical, but a person, she's allowed to do anything that she would normally do?
I didn't say that, but
I'm asking. I'm asking.
You mean a member of the household, or you mean a
Yes.
hired help?
Your help, yeah, the help.
That's also an interesting question. I don't want to weigh on it now, but there's room for discussion. If it's permitted to wash the dishes, they can wash the dishes. If it's helpful to them to use things that maybe you wouldn't be allowed to do, because it helps expedite them, likely they'd be allowed to do what's convenient for them, so long as the process is not inherently.
Also part of her regular work, not that you're telling her to do it. And
No,
that's
but that
why-
wouldn't be a difference.
Right.
They wouldn't be allowed to do an outright malacha because it's the regular work.
Right.
But when there are two options, I'll tell you this much. And I'm not, and this is a hashtag no psak. I'm not telling you what to do. But when it comes to the laws of a Gentile doing malacha on Shabbos, so for example, if you need a Gentile to come to your house and they have two options, they can use the stairs or the elevator. They can use the elevator to make their life easier. And similarly, if there are other jobs that are not inherently malacha, but so for example, if the Gentile, if your help, their job is to clean your floor, and suppose that sweeping is not a malacha, it's possible, I'm not giving you a psak, but it's possible that they, for their own convenience, would be permitted to use a vacuum, because the vacuum is not to help you, it's to make their life easier. Again, this is not a psak, but it is something to consider in this discussion.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Continuing on the example of Dr. Hammer with the dishwasher, how the status of dishwasher as a muktza affects that. That is, we are not allowed to use the dishwasher for its primary purpose, washing the dishes, but the process of opening the door to put dishes into the dishwasher is already the process of using the dishwasher. It's initial stage of the mlacha of washing dishes. So is the status of muktza prohibits to open the door, or somehow it is not relevant?
We would probably consider the opening of that door as a permitted use. To run the dishwasher, that's a prohibited use. But as long as you say L'tzarech Gufa is a use, even if it's not a sort of, Nehemiah might not let you open a dishwasher, because but maybe even Nehemiah would let you do a dishwasher. I don't know, because you would say that a dishwasher has a series of steps, maybe some that are permitted and maybe some that are prohibited. But certainly we wouldn't consider the act of opening the door or the act of opening the dish to be the drawer to be inherently a malacha, or muktza, I should say. So that's that. Here's what I think we're going to do. We're 5 minutes. We're just 5 minutes early, but I actually have, the way to appreciate someone is to let them take a break. And so I have Yosef Escobar away and Shalom Ber away, and I'm discovering how grateful I am for their role in our community's operations, because Baruch Hashem, there's a lot of good things, care packages and shul and everything else that they manage wonderfully. And so just gonna end a few minutes early so I can take care of our volunteers. My dear friends, I want to wish you a wonderful Shabbos. I'm so grateful for your participation in this Chabura, praying for good health and good news for all the dear members of our Chabura, remembering Rosa Bas Yisrael and praying for Refuah Shlema, B'soich Shar Chayli Yisrael, Refuah Shlema for Devora Dora Bas Gloria. Reb Beryl, I'm assuming your grandson is already 100%.
Yes.
Baruch
Baruch
Hashem.
Hashem. Good Shabbos. Good
Shabbos,
Shabbos.
good Shabbos. Thank you all.
So Monday, regular.
Mitzvah Hashem, unless I get a large feedback from the oilam here that they're not interested, but otherwise we'll do regular Monday.
Okay. All right. Have a great Shabbos,
Thank you.
everybody.
Reb Beryl, enjoy your visitors.
Thank you, for sure.
Take care.